We have Congressman David Kustoff on the phone with us to talk about what's going on in the 8th Congressional District, what's happening in Washington, D.C., and around the globe. It's always good to catch up with a good congressman. David, thank you for being on with us again. Good afternoon. I hope you're well, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Yeah, my guess is things in Tennessee are much better than they are in Washington, D.C.
Well, we're probably spending a lot less money. Although, I'll tell you this, over the last few weeks, we seem to be cracking down on some of that monetary spending in Washington, D.C., which is a subject that I do want to get to with you. But before we do that, I do want to talk with you about, obviously, the news of the last 48 hours, the visit from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I saw from your social media platforms that you had an opportunity to meet, to shake the hand of the Prime Minister, to speak with Benjamin Netanyahu, and I'm just curious how that meeting went. What can you tell us?
Yeah, well, so Prime Minister Netanyahu's been in the United States. I think this is his third day now. He met with President Trump a couple of days ago, a very historic meeting and news conference. He met with some members of Congress, including me, earlier this afternoon, and we met for a little over an hour. It was a bipartisan group, some Republicans, some Democrats, off-the-record talks. But one thing I can share, number one, I think most people know this who are listening to the show, Benjamin Netanyahu is one strong, shrewd leader. And you can't do the job that he does without having all of those very special qualities. So he kind of went back in time, walked us back prior to the attacks of October 7th, 2023, where we are currently, the discussions that he's had with President Trump before this trip to the U.S. and since, and then what he sees as the remaining threats to Israel and frankly to the United States, and a lot of that focused on Iran. You know, Iran sponsors the enemies of Israel, the Hamas, the Houthis, etc. And the greatest threat to Israel, I shouldn't say the greatest, but probably from his standpoint, the strongest is if Iran does in fact get nuclear capability, and the threat that it would pose not only to Israel, but certainly to the United States.
Well, let's dive a little bit deeper, if you don't mind, Congressman, in the commentary that Donald Trump did make during his joint press conference, and where, you know, with your intimate knowledge of this, where you think this is going. My initial, you know, I've learned over my years of covering Donald Trump, and I don't know if you feel similarly, that you have to be patient. We have to figure out, you know, what is our game plan and what is our goal. You know, sometimes he seems to throw these things out as a part of a beginning of a negotiation. Sometimes he seems to throw language or statements out in order to see other players involved in any given situation react. I felt like that's what he was doing. One of my hesitations is the idea that America necessarily needs to see boots on the ground in Gaza. Where are you on the concept of American soldiers on the ground maintaining security in the Gaza Strip? Yes, no, or somewhere in the middle?
So we just had an election about this, about these very issues, about American influence in different parts of the world, boots on the ground, endless wars, and Donald Trump got a pretty strong, commanding electoral vote and popular vote on those issues. My feeling is that when President Trump talked about going into Gaza and making the statements that he did, he is truly trying to disrupt. And the fact of the matter is, if you remember, before he was sworn in, a few weeks before he was sworn in, he told Hamas to get the hostages released and get things settled with Israel, or in his words, you may remember this, all hell is going to break loose. And so for President Trump to make the comments that he made a couple of days ago about Gaza, I think the message to Hamas and frankly to the enemies of Israel is you need to get your act together, because you don't know what I'm going to do and what I may do. And so, to your point, some of what President Trump talks about is for negotiating purposes. That is what he does. That is what he's done his entire life, and he's been very effective. But I do think the 30,000-foot message, Matt, is that the United States is Israel's greatest ally, and we are going to have Israel's back. And the enemies of Israel can take that what they want to, but let's get things settled with Israel.
Well, what I do like is that through his words, he is resetting what the expectations ought to be, and hopefully the American people see this loudly and clearly, that we cannot just do the same thing that we've done in the past and allow Hamas to take hold of Gaza again, allow them to begin the reconstruction in their own fashion, because I think the president well knows, as do you, Congressman Kustoff, that, as soon as the rebuilding begins, that's when the money starts flowing in. And if the same old individuals act in the same fashion, they're going to funnel that money to terrorist operations once again. And we just cannot let that happen for the sake of our allies, the Israelis.
There's no doubt about it. And Israel obviously is the only democracy in that part of the world. And if Israel were to fail, it's not going to fail. But if it were to fail, it would be a security threat to us, to the United States. So we need to make sure that Israel has the resources that it needs so that it can defend itself, and that's all they ask from us. They want ammo and they want planes, and they will do the rest. And they do a very fine job, as you know, with the IDF and with their armed forces in protecting Israel.
Our guest is Congressman David Kustoff, talking about the first 2 weeks of the Trump administration, specifically over the last several minutes, discussing the visit from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and some of the commentary and his opportunity to meet with the Prime Minister. Beyond that, I mean, obviously the biggest, I think the over the first 2 weeks, there's been a lot to digest. We are not accustomed, at least over the last 4 years, Congressman, we've not been accustomed to this type of activity out of the White House. To say the least. I can't find anything that has been, in my opinion, more impactful than what they're trying to do with Tom Homan as the border czar and the czar of ICE, if you will, and Kristi Noem has obviously been influential in her new role as Secretary of Homeland Security. That is obviously having its impact in the state of Tennessee. I'm interested in your thoughts about how that is going and how Tennessee can benefit from seeing these criminal elements removed from our country. And does Congress need to, at some point, step in and authorize some of this activity to stabilize that activity to a certain degree? Because obviously most of this is coming through executive order.
No doubt about it. I was thinking about when you set that up that Donald Trump's been president for 17 days, and I think there's been more activity in those 17 days than Biden had in his first 17 months. I mean, it's just I deal with these issues all the time, and it's tough for me to keep up with. So I know it's tough for most everybody else, my constituents, to keep track of everything that Donald Trump has executed in terms of by way of executive orders and decisions is in the first 17 days. I was at a Republican congressman meeting last week. Congressman Desjardins was there, and Congressman John Rose, and Congressman Mark Green. And President Trump said that his advisors told him during the campaign that he should talk mostly about the economy and inflation. And he said to us that he disagreed with them and thought that the people around the country were most concerned about the border and illegal immigration. And so that's what he focused on primarily. And again, that's one big reason the people went to the polls. So I think when you see what Tom Homan has done and Kristi Noem in her short time as Secretary of Homeland Security, it is really strong. They are executing on the president's policy to, first of all, have deported the most dangerous of the illegal immigrants, those with criminal records and those who have a propensity for violence, and they are doing that. They have boarded those people on planes and gotten them out of the country. And to your point, when I've been visiting with my local sheriffs and police chiefs the last week and a half or so, they've told me that ICE and Homeland Security have been reaching out to them. And that's something that they didn't see in the prior 4 years. They want to know, ICE and Homeland Security, what can they do to help local sheriffs and police chiefs to have deported those who are in the communities illegally. And my sheriffs and my police chiefs welcome that from Homeland Security.
Congressman, I want to, in the few minutes that we have left, shift gears to a few other matters. I mean, obviously there's so much. We could talk for the next hour or so about the goings-on of Washington, D.C., but some of your colleagues on the left, they have not reacted well, needless to say, to Donald Trump's effort to right-size government. There has been obviously through the Department of Government Efficiency, as we're calling it, Donald Trump in the executive branch has empowered his good friend, Elon Musk, in rooting out where waste and inefficiency is happening and even corruption. Obviously, USAID's getting a lot of attention, and this is causing a lot of consternation amongst your colleagues on the left. What can you say about your support or even concerns that you might have about the Department of Government Efficiency? What are you most hopeful that we see accomplished? And is it important, and I'll kind of follow up on the question like I did with the immigration piece, is it important that Congress act in some fashion to codify some of this activity beyond executive orders?
Yeah, well, in fact, I appreciate you setting it up that way again. With what President Trump is trying to do in terms of the border and Homeland Security, one thing he needs laws passed from us. He needs policy passed from us that he can't do through executive order, and obviously he needs funding for construction of the border wall, reconstruction of the border wall, pay for border control agents, ICE agents, etc. Donald Trump was elected to shake things up, and people are not only tired of the spending, they're really concerned about the national debt, which may be our greatest national security issue. So to have Elon essentially be deputized to go into various departments and agencies and find waste and fraud and abuse, I applaud that. I think the majority of the people that I represent appreciate that. The majority of the people in Tennessee appreciate that. And so from an appropriation standpoint, we want to follow the president's initiative, and we know that he's got a big agenda, and we want to be lockstep, because there are not too many times politically when you get the trifecta, right? When you get with the White House, the majority control of the United States Senate, and majority of control of the House of Representatives. It doesn't happen that often in our nation's history. So we've got a 2-year window, and probably, Matt, really less than that, to try to get these big things done.
One of the issues before the Congress right now is the issue of reconciliation. For those not following, this is for the budget year that ends at the end of September, but there has to be some reconciliation between the Senate and the House. Some House members seem to be holding out for a bigger bite at the debt apple. Do you have comfort and confidence that we're going to see reconciliation through the House and the Senate sooner rather than later, so that, in my opinion, we better start working on the budget for next fiscal year now to get back to regular order? I mean, you know well that, you probably, since you've been there, David, haven't seen much regular order in terms of actually getting a budget passed in a timely fashion. How hopeful are you that we get reconciliation done?
Well, we need to get it done because the American people have elected us to do that. And to your point, earlier this afternoon, President Trump was meeting with some of the Republican House leadership to talk through strategy. And so, what President Trump wants done is, going back to what you asked me a moment ago, he wants his border policy legislated into law, address the illegal immigration, address energy policy, and address tax policy, which is within my committee's jurisdiction on the House Ways and Means, so that we can extend or make permanent, rather, the Trump-era tax cuts from 2017, which mostly expire at the end of the year if we don't do anything to extend them out. So the big issue is, do we take all of this policy that I just talked to you about and try to break it up into two big bills, or one, as he calls it, one big beautiful bill? And I think, along with Speaker Mike Johnson and the Ways and Means Chairman Jason Smith, that we need to do it in one big beautiful bill. We need to get it done. We need to get it done. Newt Gingrich says we ought to get it done by July the 4th, get it on President Trump's desk before July 4th, because, I mentioned this 2-year window. When we pass these big, important, substantial tax cuts in 2017, which benefited everybody in this country, everybody listening to this show, it was a big help for them, a big help for the economy, but politically, we did it too late for it to take effect in 2018. So I want a big win for President Trump early, and I think we should do it in, as he says, one big, beautiful bill.